Fired without warning, discover the incredible truth that revealed my hidden power at work. Lucas had devoted a decade of his life to the factory, pouring sweat and heart into each long, grueling shift. He played a part, no matter how small, in building something meaningful, supporting his beloved wife Sarah and their bright-eyed kids, Emily and Jake. Every night, he'd return home, tired but proud, sharing stories of his day while the rich aroma of Sarah's home-cooked meals wafted through their cozy kitchen. But today, that pride would be shattered in an instant. The sharp clang of metal echoed in the air as Lucas was summoned to HR, his gut tightening with a sense of foreboding that would soon erupt into horror. "I'm sorry, Lucas, we've made some changes," the manager said, words slicing through him like a knife. Fired? After all that loyalty and effort? Betrayal burned in his chest. The factory had been his family, and now it was kicking him to the curb without a second thought, leaving him hollow inside. Days turned into weeks, and the uneasy silence of unemployment began to gnaw at his spirit. Bills piled up, and the laughter of his children turned into whispers of worry. He experienced despair like an anchor dragging him down, the weight unbearable. But in the biting cold of his circumstances, warmth flickered to life. His neighbors, stepping forth in solidarity, offered meals and support. Among them was Hank, the local veteran with steel-gray hair and an indomitable spirit, who spun tales of perseverance over cups of coffee. "Lucas, you gotta remember," Hank said, voice steady yet inspiring, "our worth isn't just from where we clock in. It's about what we can create." Something sparked in Lucas. He'd always dabbled with wooden tools, crafting small toys for his kids. Perhaps this passion could be more than just a hobby. It could be a way to give back to the community that had rallied around him. With a jolt of renewed purpose, Lucas dusted off his old workshop, transforming it into a sanctuary where his creativity could flourish. As weeks rolled by, Lucas carved and shaped pieces that brought joy to those in need. Crafting benches for the local park and toy boxes for children whose families were struggling, just like his own. With each cut and polish, he found healing and a newfound voice. He delved deep into the reasons that led to the layoffs, uncovering that corporate greed and heartless decision-making had torn apart the lives of many hardworking folks, not just his own. The injustice stoked a fire in his belly, urging him to take action. Lucas decided to host a rally, calling on his fellow workers to unite against this exploitation. Yet, as he prepared, he was torn. Should he invest his emotional and financial energy into this cause, or should he focus solely on landing another job? On the day of the rally, the community gathered, each face etched with stories of hardship and hope. Hearts beat in unison, voices rose to chant for justice. Standing at the forefront with the microphone in hand, Lucas felt the weight upon his shoulders. His heart raced as he choked on doubt. What if his efforts didn't matter? The crowd held its breath, anticipation thick in the air, waiting for him to reveal the truth. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As he stood there, about to speak, his emotions swelled, mixed with fear and immense determination. With a resolve he never knew he possessed, Lucas gathered his breath, ready to break the silence, to turn their pain into a rallying cry. Would they rise together, or would he leave them in the shadows of apathy? This could be the beginning of extraordinary change. He could almost taste it, and the journey had only just begun. Lucas gripped the microphone tightly, every pulse of his heart reverberating through his fingers. The crowd extended like a sea of mixed emotions, fear and hope battling for dominance on each face. As the murmurs quieted, he could feel all eyes on him, a collective breath held in anticipation. This moment hung in the air, charged with a weight he had never known before. "Thank you all for being here," he shouted, his voice steady despite the storm raging within him. We're not just here to mourn what we lost, we're here to fight for what we deserve. A cheer broke from the crowd, and Lucas felt their energy like a current surging through him. It pushed him to continue. Every one of us has given our all to this factory, built our dreams brick by brick, and given our sweat and labor. We are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. The crowd erupted in agreement, hands clapping, feet stomping in affirmation that the fight wasn't just his, but theirs too. For the first time in weeks, Lucas felt the flickers of hope ignite, warming the hollow spaces left in his heart. He shared his story, how the layoff felt like a punch to the gut, how it had drained the color from his family's laughter. But he balanced it with tales of resilience from those around him, the neighbors who turned up with casseroles and compassion, the kids who still smiled despite hard times. He spoke of Hank, the veteran who had inspired him, of their shared cups of coffee and stories of standing tall against life's brutal edges. Each word he spoke painted a compelling picture of community, unity, and the strength that lay within them. As he spoke, he saw heads nodding, eyes lighting up with a spark that had been absent for too long. Together, we can hold corporations accountable. We can demand fair treatment. We can build a future where loyalty is honored and hard work is rewarded. Another roar of approval erupted through the crowd, a sound that resonated deep within Lucas, sending shivers of exhilaration up his spine. But even amidst the electrifying energy, doubt lingered like a dark cloud. What if this was just a moment? What if nothing changed? As he scanned the crowd, he noticed a woman holding a child tightly, worry etched on her face, a reminder that stakes were real and tangible. Lucas steadied his breathing, redirecting his focus. Let us take our power back. He lifted his voice higher, punctuating his words with the fire building within him. It's time for the workers, the backbone of this community, to stand strong together. We can turn our pain into action. He could see the flicker of determination igniting in others' eyes now too. It felt like the flame had caught, yet, just as enthusiasm surged, Lucas caught a flash of steel-gray hair in the corner of his eye. Hank stood at the back, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Frustration washed over him, and for a second, Lucas faltered. Was the veteran-esque a mirror of his own fears? Change doesn't happen overnight. It takes grit, sweat, and yes, heart. Lucas pressed on, clenching his fists. But this is the first step, a step we take together. The crowd erupted into a chorus of encouragement, stirring every part of his spirit. Lucas felt buoyed, ready to lead, yet he was still aware of the abyss of uncertainty that lay ahead. What did taking this stand truly mean for him and his family? But just as his resolve strengthened, the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder, ominous. Lucas turned slowly as the noise echoed off the buildings around them, dread pooling in his stomach. What is happening now? He wondered, the rallying cries faltering into murmurs of confusion. The emotions swirling within him shifted, as uncertainty once more threatened to cloud the hope he had dared to build. Would they be met with support, or would something more daunting loom ahead? The question lingered as the sirens blared closer, marking an unsettling turning point in Lucas's fight for justice. What awaited him and his community on this tumultuous path was still veiled in mystery. The crowd shifted uneasily, turning heads as the sound of the sirens grew louder. Lucas felt a wave of anxiety wash over him, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. The energy from the rally, spark fueling his fight, started to flicker, uncertainty shadowing every face around him. People exchanged worried glances, whispers rippling through the crowd like a gust of wind. Are they coming for us? A man in the front shouted, his voice laced with fear. Lucas's heart sank. He took a step forward, brushing a strand of sweat from his brow, desperate to comfort. Let us stay calm, he urged, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. We didn't come this far to back down now. But inside, questions flooded his mind. What would happen if the authorities showed up? Would they confront the workers? Would they silence this newfound unity? The sirens grew closer, and the sound echoed against the walls of the factory, reverberating like a haunting call. Hank stepped forward, eyes sharp as he scanned the street. It could be the cops, looking to break this up. We need to be ready, he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Or it could be someone here to stand with us. Lucas tried to inject a hint of hope into the conversation, but even he wasn't sure. The tension in the air was palpable, each heartbeat a countdown to an uncertain outcome. A figure emerged from the distance, contrasting sharply against the gray of the pavement. The crowd collectively held its breath. Lucas squinted, trying to make out who it was. As the figure drew closer, the sound of the sirens dimmed slightly. "Lucas!" A familiar voice rang out. His heart raced. It was Sophie, a colleague and friend from the factory. She rushed toward him, her breath quickened, eyes wide with panic. "They're on their way. We need to leave now." Lucas grappled internally. Leaving felt like defeat, a retreat from the fight that had ignited hope within them. While his instincts screamed to stay, he looked around at the faces of his friends and neighbors. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he had a responsibility to everyone with him. "Hank," he called, looking back at the veteran. "What should we do?" Hank's gaze was steady, revealing a hidden strength. "It's your call, Lucas. We're with you, whatever direction you choose." The confidence in Hank's voice provided the grounding Lucas needed. "Fight or flight?" Lucas muttered under his breath. He felt a swell of determination rise up, fighting to drown out the doubt. "We're not leaving. We're standing here together." The crowd erupted in renewed energy, a loud roar of defiance blending with the fading sirens. Lucas raised his arms once more. "If they come, we'll show them we want to be silenced. We're not just workers, we're a community." A wave of cheers erupted, lifting the weight that had threatened to pull them down, but just as hope flickered through the air, the sound of heavy boots echoed from the end of the street. A line of officers appeared, their expressions stern. A chill rippled through the crowd, hearts pounding like drums. Lucas felt the tension tighten in his chest. Who would speak first? What message would they bring? The moment hung between anticipation and dread. Would they advocate for change, or would they seek to quash this uprising? As the officers approached, Lucas locked eyes with Hank, grateful for the support, but fear tugged at his resolve. Facing the unknown, he clenched his fists, ready to speak once more. "Let us show them what it means to stand united," he shouted, the words surging as he turned to the crowd. But would their unity withstand the authority marching toward them? The answer loomed dangerously near, ready to reshape everything they had fought for. The officers advanced slowly, their boots crunching on the asphalt. Lucas took a deep breath, steeling himself. He could see the determination in the faces around him, his neighbors, his friends, the people he had shared lunch breaks and laughter with. But uncertainty weighed heavily in the air. "Stay together," he yelled, gripping the makeshift banner they'd created. It felt like a lifeline. The crowd squeezed closer, forming an unbreakable wall of solidarity. For a moment, they were more than just workers. They were a family. The lead officer stepped forward, his brow furrowed, his uniform crisp and imposing. "You need to disperse," he commanded, his voice booming like thunder. "This is an illegal gathering." Lucas's heart raced, pumping with a mix of fear and anger. "We're not going anywhere," he called back, feeling the heat of defiance swell in his chest. "We have the right to stand up for ourselves. We have a voice." Whispers erupted among the crowd. Lucas could feel the energy shift, from uncertainty to a fierce determination. Hank leaned in closer to Lucas. "Remember, it's about us. Don't let them divide you." The officer's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this. The law is not on your side." Sophie pushed through the crowd, her hands trembling, but her voice strong. "You think you can silence us with threats? We've fought too hard for that." A wave of encouragement rippled through the crowd, building momentum, wrapping around Lucas's heart like a garland of hope. He watched as faces transformed, the fear melting into something fierce. This was more than a protest, it was a declaration of existence. But suddenly, a different officer stepped up, his tone softer yet authoritative. "Listen, we're not here to escalate things. Let us talk," he said, surveying the group. "We understand your concerns, but you need to cooperate." Lucas caught a break in the officer's demeanor, the flicker of understanding that hinted at a possibility for dialogue rather than confrontation. "Why would you want to talk?" "You've shut us down for so long," Lucas replied, his voice echoing the hurt that had brewed inside for years. "As long as we can find common ground," the officer replied, his stance easing just a bit. "We can help you escalate this through the proper channels. But you need to disperse now, peacefully." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. "Channels?" Hank muttered under his breath, disbelief etched on his face. Sophie stepped forward again, her intensity captivating. "Proper channels? For years, we've been through channels that lead to dead ends. We need action, not red tape." Lucas's gut twisted. She was right. This felt like another way to silence them, to wrap things up neatly and push them back to their corners. "We'll listen," he said, trying to grasp the tension before it spiraled out of control. "But it can't just be words. We're done with promises that fade away. We'll draft a proposal," the first officer interjected. "You have our attention, but you need to comply with the law first. Are you ready to stand with us?" Lucas challenged, lifting his chin defiantly. The crowd shifted again, filled with anticipation. Every heartbeat seemed to echo louder now, resonating like a distant drum rising for battle. As the lead officer hesitated, the air was electrified with possibilities. Lucas could almost taste the freedom woven into every hopeful heartbeat of the crowd. He knew that whatever they decided next would define more than just their day. It would mark their legacy, and then a roar erupted from the crowd at the realization that they had the confidence to demand change. But Lucas felt a chill run down his spine as a last chilling thought crept in. Would they really be heard, or was this just another trap? With the blade of tension hanging over them, the future remained uncertain. One thing lingered in the air: the battle was far from over. What were they prepared to sacrifice for their voices to be truly heard? The tension in the air was palpable, a live wire ready to spark. Lucas could feel the heat radiating from the crowd, their hearts beating as one. He scanned the sea of faces around him, determined eyes locked on the officers, fists clenched tight. What they had started felt bigger than any one person or any single threat. They were fighting for everything they stood for. The lead officer shifted, his brow wet from sweat and uncertainty. He'd expected subservience, fear, maybe even resignation. Instead, he faced an army of unyielding resolve. "You understand that this could go badly for you, don't you?" He warned again, but the weight of his words felt less commanding this time. A deep breath escaped Lucas's lungs. "You think we're afraid?" he shouted back. "This is our home. You can't intimidate us anymore." A ripple of agreement coursed through the crowd. Lucas's voice trembled, but he didn't back down. "We're fighting for our families, for the rights that have been trampled on for too long." He could see heads nodding, the fire lighting in each person. Sophie moved closer, her conviction transforming from fear into fierce bravery. "If we walk away, we hand you the power. No more. No more silence," she cried, pushing her way to the front. The crowd surged forward, a tide of emotion. Hank's voice joined the chorus. "We demand to be treated with respect. No more empty promises." The officer's eyes darted back to his fellow officers, seeking reassurance. For a brief moment, doubt flickered in his stern demeanor. Lucas seized the chance. "We want to know what you'll do for us, not just what we should do for you. Will you finally treat us as equals?" An unexpected silence settled over the streets, like the calm before a storm. Lucas's heart pounded, every beat exposing the gravity of their stand. The lead officer, watching the unity grow, shifted again. "If you come to the station, I can arrange a meeting." "Meetings don't mean anything if they're not real," Lucas snapped, though he felt the tiniest pulse of hope stirring within him. "We need actions. Changes. Not more doors slammed shut." The officer inhaled sharply, uncertainty still evident on his face. "I can only offer what's feasible," he replied, struggling to maintain his authority against the rising human wall. Somewhere in the crowd, a shout broke through. "We want change now, not tomorrow." It was a voice Lucas didn't recognize, but the urgency resonated. He felt it, everybody felt it. As the crowd echoed that sentiment, Lucas's mind raced. Together, they could push harder, shout louder. But would they be met with real change or more empty words? "Look around," Lucas shouted, gesturing to the massive crowd. This is what we can do. Imagine if we stand here tomorrow and the next day. Are you ready to keep this fight alive? His words struck like a hammer. A murmur spread through the crowd, growing into a chorus of yes. That surged towards the officers. The possibilities were intoxicating, overwhelming, but as the officers huddled, murmuring among themselves, Lucas felt that earlier chill creep back. What would happen next? Was this just the beginning or an end disguised as hope? As the officers returned, their expressions still unreadable, Lucas's heart raced with anticipation. What decision would they make? And what would it mean for their future? With the weight of the moment pressing down on him, he took a deep breath, ready for whatever was to come. But deep within, he questioned everything. Were they ready to turn words into action, or would this be another chapter of silence? Lucas watched as the officers turned back to the crowd, their whispers cutting through the air like knives. The palpable tension grew thicker until it felt almost suffocating. His stomach twisted. What if they dismissed them, turned away once again? What would happen to the hope igniting inside him and everyone else standing shoulder to shoulder? Then the lead officer stepped forward, the sun glinting off his badge. He cleared his throat, clearly aware that he was the focal point of both fear and fervor. "We will schedule a meeting," he announced, his voice a mix of defiance and reluctance. "But it will take time. We cannot rush change. You must understand, no more excuses." Someone shouted from the back, punctuating the officer's words with anger. The sea of voices surged once more, rising and clashing. "We want action, not more promises." Lucas felt the crowd vibrating with energy. They weren't ready to settle. And his pulse quickened with every shout. It was alive, a living entity driven by frustration and passion, the very essence of their struggle. Sophie squeezed Lucas's arm, and their eyes locked. Both were walking a tightrope of hope and despair. "What if he is right?" she whispered, though her voice reflected anything but certainty. "What if this is just it's not?" Lucas interrupted, shaking his head. He leaned in closer. "We won't let them take our fight away again. Not this time." Everyone was feeling the power surging through their collective hearts, but uncertainty still clouded their eyes. Lucas scanned their faces, from the youth to the elders gathered for the cause. They all shared the same burning desire for change, but fear lurked beneath the surface, threatening to extinguish the flame. "Look," he called to the crowd, his voice steadying. "We've overcome so much already. They think they can ignore us, that they can dismiss us, but look at us. We're here, standing tall. This is our moment, but we can't just depend on them. Then what do we do?" A voice rang out, trembling with a mix of frustration and hope. "We make ourselves heard." "Louder!" Lucas shouted, rallying their spirits. "Tomorrow, let South pack the street again. Let them see we're not going anywhere. They need to feel us walking in their doors until they can't ignore us any longer. We keep fighting." Across the crowd, heads bobbed, arms raised. It felt like the ground shifted beneath him as energy rippled through their bodies. Lucas could feel it, anticipation woven with raw adrenaline. This was so much bigger than a meeting. It was about showing they could fill the streets with their voices, their dreams, all the things they believed in. But just as Lucas soaked in the moment, another officer stepped forward, brandishing his demand for attention. "Enough," he called out, waving a hand in caution. "All this noise won't change anything. We're still bound by protocols. You will need to comply or face consequences." The crowd froze, a collective gasp escaping an icy reminder of the perilous path they tread. Lucas caught some of the faces around him, shrinking back from the threat. Doubt crept in again, gnawing at the edges of their conviction. "Should we?" A voice faltered in the sea of uncertainty. "No. They couldn't back down now." The thought clawed at Lucas's insides. "We have every right to demand respect. No one can take our voice away. Not again." But as the murmurs swelled in confusion and fear returned like a shadow over their brave hearts, Lucas's chest tightened. Would they stand firm, or would they crumble under pressure? The lead officer's eyes shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, revealing a flicker of doubt. It was so small, yet enormous. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the charged crowd, Lucas felt the weight of a fragmented hope. Could they really unleash a storm of change? While uncertainty lingered, a spark ignited within him. With one last push, he cried out, "We cannot let fear dictate our future." But would they heed his call or spiral back into silence? The moment hung heavy in the air, holding the fate of their movement in balance. What would they decide when the dawn came? Lucas stood at the center of the crowd, tension weaving through each person's shoulders like a heavy blanket. Their eyes flickered with a mix of hope and fear, each heartbeat echoing the question, would they confront the looming threat or shrink back into silence? Sophie's grip on his arm tightened as the moments stretched, and Lucas instinctively took a step forward. "We're not going to let them intimidate us," he said, his voice charged with conviction. He glanced around, daring the crowd to catch the flame burning in his chest. A woman near the front shouted, "What do we need to do?" Her desperation matched his own, hanging in the air like a challenge. He inhaled deeply, letting that desperation fuel his words. "We need to make noise, real noise. Show them we're not going away. Tomorrow, we gather. But tonight, we need to channel this energy into something powerful. Let us plan, let us organize. We can't just stand here waiting for their approval." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement while others remained hesitant. He searched for familiar faces, the fellow fighters who had stuck by him through thick and thin. Each one mattered, each one could amplify their voice. "Can you feel it?" he urged, letting the passion seep into his voice. "This change? It starts with us. They want to pretend we don't exist, but they can't ignore our presence." Sophie looked up at him, her expression a mixture of admiration and worry. "But what if they really try to silence us?" Lucas clenched his fists, remembering how many times they'd been ignored, how often their hopes had been crushed. "That's exactly why we must unite. If we don't show them our strength, they'll think they can push us back." A man in the crowd stepped forward, his face lined but fierce. "I agree. When we come together, when we shout together, they can't drown us out. But we need a plan, something concrete. Right?" Lucas called out, catching the fire in the other's eyes. "Let's gather at the park tomorrow at dawn. Put up signs, bring banners. We'll create a presence that no one can ignore. Let us put together a list of our demands and make sure everyone knows why we're fighting." His words felt thick with the weight of determination, and for a moment, the doubts faded, replaced by steely resolve. People began to rally around the idea, voices lifting, affirming their commitment, but then came that chilling reminder from another officer, cutting across their emerging unity. "Don't forget, this could turn against you. Tread carefully." A collective tension returned to the group, like a taut wire ready to snap. Lucas caught Sophie's worried glance again. "This is it. This is where we learn whether we are serious about fighting for change," he whispered, hoping his words acted as an anchor. Suddenly, something shifted in the air, a realization, a spirit of collective strength blossoming amidst the fears. He sensed it. The crowd's fear began to dissolve into something else, an insatiable desire to drive back against the tide of complacency. "Together, we fight," Lucas pronounced, raising his arms in solidarity, a wave of energy rolling through the crowd. "Tomorrow, we want to just raise our voices, we'll raise the stakes." That evening, they parted ways, leaving fragments of that electric energy hanging in the air. Lucas felt a tingle of anticipation as he walked home alongside Sophie, the darkness around them almost cloaked in determination. But deep within, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling of danger looming closer, ready to unleash chaos. As they neared her house, Sophie paused, her brow furrowed. What if tomorrow brings more than we bargained for? He locked eyes with her, heart pounding with both excitement and apprehension. "Then we'll face it together. Whatever it is, we're ready to stand our ground." How could he be so sure? As the sun set behind them, Lucas felt the weight of an unanswered question press down on his chest. Were they ready for the storm that was about to break? Dawn broke with a haze of orange and gold, the promise of a new day filling the air. Lucas barely slept, thoughts spinning like a tornado through his mind. Excitement danced with dread, and he could feel the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders. This was it, the moment he had fought for. He dressed quickly, slipping into a worn t-shirt that felt heavy with the memories of battles fought and lost. Sophie arrived a few moments later, her determined expression fueling his courage. As they approached the park, the growing crowd came into view. Banners fluttered in the soft breeze like the wings of restless birds. Lucas could see people he recognized, their faces a mix of determination and anxiety. He nodded to a few familiar ones, feeling a swell of pride in their bravery. But with every step, the tension thickened. Voices rose and fell like the sound of a distant storm, and Lucas could sense the anticipation. He stepped onto a small platform that was hastily put together, his heart racing. "Today, we stand together," he shouted, voice echoing against the trees that surrounded them. The crowd erupted with a roar that shook the leaves. Sophie stood near the front, eyes shimmering with fierce resolve. "We need to make them hear us," she cried out, raising her sign high. It read, "We will not be silenced." The energy was electric, and it coursed through Lucas like fire. "Let us show them who we are," he yelled, rallying everyone around him. "Our voices matter. Our lives matter. This is just the beginning." A woman near the back held up a megaphone, raising it like a trophy. "Let us start with our demands," she shouted, and a ripple of agreement surged through the crowd. Lucas felt the heat of unity blossoming among them, turning fear into something potent and raw, but not everyone felt the same way. As they began to chant, Lucas spotted shadows moving at the park's edge. Uniformed officers stood, watching them with wary eyes. The confidence in the crowd faltered for just a moment, uncertainty creeping in like cold fingers. "What do we do if they approach us?" a voice whispered anxiously from the back. The question hung heavily in the air, charging the space with palpable tension. Lucas swallowed hard, his heart thudding loudly, reminding him of the weight they carried. Sophie stepped forward, fear flickering behind her brave facade. "We keep shouting. We stay together. We don't let them intimidate us. Right?" Lucas took a breath, hands balled into fists. "The world changes when we fight for it. We cannot let them control our narrative any longer." At that moment, the officers began to advance. Lucas's pulse quickened as he felt a cold breeze brush against the back of his neck. The crowd shifted, fear bubbling just beneath the surface as they sensed the impending confrontation. "What do we do, Lucas?" Sophie's voice trembled slightly, and he could see her anxiety reflected in the eyes of those around them. "Stick together," he shouted, drawing on every ounce of courage. "We won't back down. They can't silence us. Not today." But as the officers closed in, their faces stern, Lucas felt a flicker of doubt creeping in. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment everything could change for better or worse. Just then, a low rumble echoed from beyond the park, a sound that made hearts stop. Was that thunder? Or the distant grinding of an approaching storm? "What are they bringing?" he murmured, watching the officers exchange tense glances behind the tightening line. Was it fear or anticipation? As the echoes of his words faded, Lucas held his breath, knowing that today could either ignite the flame of change or plunge them into the chaos they feared most. "Together," he implored, his voice fierce. But even he wondered what would happen when the storm finally broke. The tension in the air thickened as the low rumble grew louder, morphing into a guttural growl. Lucas squinted against the brightness of the sun filtering through the trees, scanning the horizon for the source of the sound. The crowd stood as a unified mass, eyes darting back and forth like startled deer. Anxiety painted their faces, but the spirit of defiance still flickered in their hearts. "Keep your eyes on me," Lucas urged, his voice rising above the murmur of the crowd. He felt Sophie's presence next to him, a steadying force in the storm of emotions swirling around them. "This is our moment. We will not be cowed by fear." As the rhythmic thudding of boots grew clearer, Lucas saw movement. A line of armored officers marched in formation, shields glistening in the morning light. They were a wall of intimidation, a stark contrast to the colorful banners and hopeful faces surrounding them. The clash of ideals felt palpable, a sudden chill whipping through the crowd. "Are you ready to stand firm?" Lucas called, rallying their spirits once more. He raised his fist, and the crowd responded, a chorus of voices singing out in defiance. "We are here, and we will not be silenced." As he spoke, carrying the fire of determination, Lucas could feel his heart race, each beat matching the pulse of the chant. He caught Sophie's eye. She was wide-eyed yet fierce. She had faith, and that made him fight harder against his own doubts. The officers halted at the edge of the crowd, their expressionless faces almost robotic. A tall officer stepped forward, megaphone in hand. "This event is unpermitted. We will have to disperse immediately." A ripple of gasps and murmurs spread among the crowd. Disperse? Lucas felt the anger rise like a tide. "They can't dictate our right to gather," he bellowed, and the crowd clapped back with their own agreement. "We will not be silenced." But with that declaration came a swell of panic. What if they really tried to break them up? Lucas didn't want to imagine his friends being pushed aside like they didn't matter. He clenched his jaw, ready for whatever came next. "Let us make our demands clear." Sophie raised her sign higher, her voice cutting through the tension. "We want change. We deserve to be heard." The crowd echoed her sentiment, voices blending into a powerful anthem, a profound collective yearning for justice. Lucas felt the ground shake beneath their feet, not just from the officers' advance, but from the unity that surged like electricity. And then it happened. From behind the officers, a sound burst forth, a strange, rumbling roar that erupted and echoed throughout the park. Lucas turned to see a large vehicle rolling in, painted in dark colors, and then he recognized it, an armored van. "What do they want?" A voice quavered from the back of the crowd. Lucas could hardly respond, his stomach twisting in knots. Just then, a figure emerged from the vehicle, standing tall and imposing. Then, the figure raised a fist. Was it a signal? The crowd held its breath. Lucas felt a spark of something, hope mixed with caution. He had to believe this was a moment of empowerment, but doubt gnawed at him. "What if they have come to confront us?" He murmured to Sophie, feeling the heat of uncertainty crawl up his spine, but a glimmer shone in her eyes. "Whatever happens, we face it together," she said, squeezing his hand. The armored figure stepped forward, speaking into a microphone. "We are here to listen, not to fight." In that moment, Lucas couldn't believe his ears. Was this a chance to be understood? Could this be the turning point? As the crowd buzzed with tentative excitement, Lucas knew they had to seize this rare opportunity. But would the moment slip away like sand through their fingers? "What do we say next?" he asked, feeling the weight of the world on their shoulders. The answer lay somewhere between their fear and the flicker of hope. Would they find their voices once more, or would they remain silenced? The tension hung thick in the air, and Lucas could hardly breathe as the crowd waited for him to lead them into a future unknown. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all the eyes on him. The crowd was a living entity, vibrant yet fragile, with hopes hanging in the balance. Every heartbeat echoed the question that rang through his mind: what would they say next? The armored figure's words hung in the air, a flicker of possibility. "Together, we fight," Lucas shouted, his voice cutting through the uncertainty. "They're here to listen. But we have to show them why we deserve to be heard." He pushed forward into the wave of collective strength building alongside him. It felt like a spark had ignited, lighting a path that had once felt dark and filled with doubt. Sophie stepped forward, confidence blooming in her stance. "We want to end the exploitation. We want dignity in our work. We want our families to feel safe and secure." The crowd erupted, voices melding like a choir, swelling beyond volume more than sound. It felt like raw power. "Exactly," Lucas shouted, riding the momentum. "These aren't just demands, they're our rights as workers, as people. We're not just numbers, we are lives, families, stories intertwined." He could feel the heat of determination radiating from those around him. The energy was infectious, and doubts began to lift like mist under the morning sun. A collective cheer surged through the crowd, voices rising to crescendo. "We deserve more. We will not be silenced." It echoed like thunder, swelling his heart with each fervent shout. Lucas locked eyes with Hank, who nodded approvingly, his own proud smile reflecting the collective spirit. The tall officer, still standing under the weight of their fervor, raised his hands in a sign of peace. If we are to truly engage, we need to talk. What do you want? What solutions do you propose? Lucas's breath caught. This was the moment to speak, not just for himself, but for the community that had rallied behind him. We want higher wages, he announced, heart racing as he felt the crowd's energy swell like a rising tide. Benefits that respect our work. Representation that honors our existence. Healthcare, Sophie interjected, her voice piercing through the foam of voices. Job security and respect. We want to feel valued, not disposable. Each demand felt like a bomb set to detonate. Rippling through the crowd, Lucas blinked back tears. The laughter of his children, the worried furrow on Sarah's brow, they fueled the fire within him. He held their glances in his mind like lit candles, illuminating the path ahead. We can build a future that honors us, he continued, his voice steady and clear. But we need you to take this seriously. Our demands can't just live on paper. The lead officer exchanged glances with his colleagues, concern etched across their faces. The atmosphere pulsed with raw emotion, collective hope crashing against institutional barriers. We can't make promises, but I can assure you we'll look at every point. Can you accept that? He replied, the authority in his voice no longer a command, but a request for dialogue. The crowd murmured, uncertain yet yearning for more. Lucas sensed the shifting tide. This was it. We can work together to initiate real change. The words blazed from his lips, igniting a wave of hope among those gathered. Let us not surrender to the fear that has kept us silent for so long. Suddenly, a woman in the back began to chant, "Together we stand, together we fight." The chant spread like wildfire, a binding anthem sweeping through the crowd, elevating spirits to new heights. Together we stand, together we fight. Beneath the armor and uniforms, Lucas sensed a fracture in the officers' facade. They were taken aback, disappointment etching their features as they heard the sentiment growing amidst the gathering. Lucas continued, heart brimming with newfound hope. We're not just asking for changes, we're demanding action. Now is the time for real conversations, not just pages of promises. A roar rose up, unified and fierce, feeling like an overwhelming wave overtaking them. All of the emotions they had bottled up, the uncertainty and fear, had ignited into something tremendous, a community reborn in strength. As he looked at the determined faces around him, the spark of possibility ignited into a blazing belief. Lucas knew they weren't going back. Together, they would rewrite their story. With the cries of solidarity ringing in the air, he thought of his family, the future that lay before them, and smiled. In this moment, they were not just workers, they were warriors of change. As the tide of voices continued to surge, Lucas held onto the fragile beauty of hope. Tomorrow a meeting with expectations, he declared, lifting his chin with newfound confidence. We'll write our demands and refuse to back down until we are heard. The crowd erupted into cheers, a closing anthem playing under the summer sun. As the energy echoed around them, Lucas felt the weight of his past start to lift. They were no longer just a group of laid-off workers, they were a community. A family standing together, ready to reshape their reality. Change was on the horizon, and they were taking the first steps forward together. It's dawn breaking right before their eyes. Now is the time for change. You need to subscribe now to catch more incredible stories of transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to keep our message alive. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this inspiring ending. Make your voice count. And for everyone who believes in standing together, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this message. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand how important it is to support the channel through these actions. Join us now.